At 50 years old, I learned exactly how invisible a woman could become. Not quietly invisible, not gently ignored, but actively dismissed, spoken over, looked through, underestimated with a smile sharp enough to draw blood. It happened on a Tuesday morning in a glass-walled conference room that smelled like burnt coffee and ambition. The kind of room designed to make you feel small if you didn't belong there. And according to everyone seated at that polished table, I didn't. I sat at the far end, my hands folded neatly in my lap, faint streaks of dried paint still clinging to my knuckles no matter how hard I'd scrubbed them the night before. My blazer was second-hand, but clean. My shoes practical. My hair, salt and pepper now, pulled back into a low bun that betrayed both exhaustion and discipline. Across from me, 3 men and 1 woman flipped through printed proposals they hadn't read. The woman, 30-something, perfectly styled, expensive perfume, glanced at me and offered a tight, polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "So," she said, tapping her pen, "you're here about the community arts space." One of the men snorted before I could answer. "Let's just get this over with," he muttered. "We've got real investors waiting." I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the old instinct to apologize for taking up space, to shrink, to explain myself before being asked. But something in me, older now, tougher, refused. "Yes," I said calmly. "I'm here about the building on Hawthorne and 9th. Another man leaned back in his chair, eyes flicking down to my hands. "You know that property is zoned for commercial redevelopment, right?" he said. "We're talking luxury retail, not craft classes." The woman laughed softly. "Watercolor and pottery don't exactly pay market rates." Their words landed the way they were meant to, dismissive, patronizing, final. This wasn't the first time someone had looked at me and decided my worth. "At 50, you get used to it. They assume you're tired, outdated, past your prime. If you're queer, or worse, just discovering you might be, you're treated like a curiosity at best, a joke at worst. And if you don't dress like money, they assume you don't have any." I inhaled slowly. "I'm aware of the zoning," I said, "and the market rates." The man who'd spoken first rolled his eyes. "With respect," he said, emphasizing the word like it offended him, "we're looking for serious buyers." The room went quiet. The old version of me, the woman who'd spent 30 years being agreeable, married, dependable, quietly miserable, would have backed down. But that woman had cracked open last year, the day my daughter hugged me and whispered, "Mom, you're allowed to want more." The day my marriage ended not with screaming, but with silence. The day I realized loneliness was less frightening than living half alive. "I'm a serious buyer," I said. The woman raised an eyebrow. "Oh, yes, and before you dismiss me again, I suggest you check the bank letter attached to page 17. They froze. The man closest to the stack flipped pages reluctantly, then stopped. His face changed first. Not dramatically, just enough. "What is this?" he asked. "A proof of funds letter," I said evenly, "from North Shore Private Banking." Silence thickened. The woman leaned forward, her perfume suddenly sharp. "That account number is mine," I finished. For the first time since I'd entered the room, they actually looked at me. Not my clothes. Not my age. Me. Still, skepticism lingered. "Where exactly," one man asked slowly, "did you get this kind of money?" There it was. The question people asked when they couldn't reconcile their assumptions with reality. I smiled, not sweetly, not cruelly. Just honestly. "I built it," I said. I hadn't always been invisible. Once I'd been the woman everyone relied on. The dependable wife, the supportive mother, the editor who fixed everyone else's words while silencing her own. For decades, I'd helped build other people's dreams, quietly, efficiently, without complaint. And when my marriage ended after 25 years, I walked away with something unexpected. Not bitterness. Clarity. The house sold, the account split, the silence afterward unbearable. So I bought a small coastal cottage I couldn't really afford and told myself I wanted solitude. That lie lasted exactly 3 weeks. Because solitude has a way of stripping you down until the truth is all that's left. And the truth was this: I didn't just want peace. I wanted rebirth. The flood in the kitchen, the ruined floor, the rot beneath, had felt like a metaphor screaming at me. Everything I'd built on top of decay was finally collapsing. And that's when she arrived. Julia, or Jules, as she later told me to call her. She wasn't loud or flashy or eager to impress. She simply was. Competent, grounded, unapologetic. She fixed my house the way no one had ever fixed me, without condescension, without pity, without trying to control the outcome. And somewhere between the hammer strikes and the smell of sawdust, something in me shifted. I noticed the way she moved through space, how she listened more than she spoke, how she treated me not as fragile but as capable. It terrified me, because admiration was one thing, awareness was another, and desire, quiet, uninvited, was something I had never allowed myself to name. Especially not at 50. Back in the conference room, the men were scrambling now, papers rustling, whispers exchanged. The woman cleared her throat. "Well," she said, forcing a professional smile, "this changes things." I met her gaze. "Does it?" "Yes," she said quickly. "Of course, we didn't realize." "That's the problem," I interrupted. "You didn't realize." The air shifted. "I'm not asking for your approval," I continued. "I'm informing you of my intent. I'll be purchasing the building at asking price. No delays, no conditions that compromise my vision." "And your vision is?" one man asked carefully. "A cooperative arts and trades space," I said. "Affordable studios, skill sharing, community programs." The woman hesitated. "That's not very profitable." I smiled again. "It doesn't need to be," I said. "It needs to be sustainable." They stared, because the truth unsettles people who are used to power flowing one way. "I'll have my lawyer contact you by end of day," I finished, standing. "Unless you prefer to keep underestimating me." No one spoke. As I walked out, my heart pounded, not with fear but exhilaration. For the first time in decades, I had chosen myself. Later that evening, I sat alone in my cottage, the ocean roaring beyond the windows, paperwork spread across the table. The house was quiet again, solid, repaired. A knock came at the door. I opened it to find Jules standing there, hair damp from rain, hands tucked into her jacket pockets. "Hey," she said, "just wanted to drop off the final invoice." I took the envelope, our fingers brushing. "Electric. You okay?" she asked, noticing my flushed face. "I think," I said slowly, "I just bought a building." Her eyes widened. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. "Of course you did." The warmth in her voice undid something in me. "Would you," I asked, heart pounding, "like to come in for tea?" She hesitated. Just for a second. Then nodded. "Yeah," she said softly, "I would." As we sat across from each other, steam curling from our mugs, I felt the unmistakable sensation of standing at the edge of something vast. Not just a new chapter, but a whole new story. And I had no idea yet that Jules wasn't the only woman about to change my life. Jules stayed longer than either of us planned. At first, it really was just tea, 2 mugs between us. The repaired kitchen humming quietly, no leaks, no emergencies, only the soft rhythm of the ocean outside and the uncomfortable awareness that something fragile had entered the room with us. "So," she said casually, wrapping her hands around the mug, "you bought a building." I laughed breathless, apparently. "That's impressive." The word landed heavier than she intended. I wasn't used to being admired for decisions that weren't domestic or self-sacrificing. I didn't always make bold choices, I admitted. I spent most of my life choosing what was safe. She studied me then, really studied me. "And now?" I hesitated, the truth pressed against my ribs. "Now I don't want to disappear," I said. "I've done that already." She nodded, as if she understood more than I'd said. Silence stretched, not awkward but charged, the kind that hums with unspoken possibilities. "You ever notice," she said slowly, "how people decide who you are before you open your mouth?" I smiled wryly, "Today very much so." "They do it to me all the time," she continued. Assume I'm just a contractor or that I don't belong in certain rooms. Her jaw tightened, not bitter, just firm. I let them think that, she added. It's easier. That night after she left, I lay awake replaying the sound of her voice. Not flirtatious, not rehearsed, honest. And terrifying. Because honesty has a way of cracking doors you didn't know you'd locked. The next morning, I went to the building. Hawthorne and Ninth sat at the edge of a changing neighborhood. Old brick, boarded windows, history clinging stubbornly to its bones. A place developers wanted to erase and replace. Inside, dust motes danced in slanted light. I could already see it. Work tables, shared studios, people creating without apology. "Excuse me." I turned to see a woman standing near the doorway. She was elegant in a quiet way, dark curls streaked with silver, sharp eyes softened by curiosity. She wore a tailored coat and carried herself like someone used to being listened to. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't realize this space was taken." "It is now," I replied. "I'm a leaner." Her eyebrows lifted. "Marisol," she said, "I represent the neighborhood council." Of course she did. "I was under the impression this building was being redeveloped," she continued carefully. "Luxury retail." I smiled. "Not anymore." Something flickered across her face, relief quickly masked. "That's unexpected." "I get that a lot," I said. We talked for nearly an hour, about zoning, about community displacement, about people being pushed aside by those with louder voices and deeper pockets. "You're different," she said finally. I laughed, "So I've been told." "No," she said, "different because you listen." Her gaze lingered, assessing me not as an obstacle, but as an ally. When she left, she handed me her card. "If you need support," she said, "or resistance." I tucked it into my pocket, unaware my hands were shaking. By the end of the week, word had spread. Not kindly. At the coffee shop, I overheard whispers. "Can you believe her? Some midlife crisis project. Probably doesn't even know what she's doing." A man I didn't recognize scoffed loudly. "She'll sell in 6 months, they always do." I stirred my coffee slowly, resisting the urge to explain myself. I didn't owe anyone proof, but I would give them results. That evening, Jules stopped by unannounced. "I heard people talking," she said, "about the building." "Let me guess," I sighed. "They think I'm naive." She smirked. "That's not the word they used." We stood close in the doorway, the tension undeniable now. "Does it bother you?" she asked. "Yes," I said honestly, "but not for the reasons they think." She searched my face. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Not of failing, of succeeding and being seen." Her expression softened. "You won't be alone," she said quietly. The words settled into me like a promise. Behind her, headlights illuminated the road, Marisol's car slowing, then stopping. She stepped out, spotting us together. Her eyes flicked between Jules and me. And in that look, curious, measuring, I felt it. The beginning of something complicated. Something powerful. Something no one saw coming. They called her confused and desperate, until she outsmarted them all. The rumor reached me before the permits did. She's in over her head. She doesn't understand development. She's being emotional. It was always that last one that made my jaw tighten. Emotional. As if caring deeply were a flaw, as if conviction were hysteria once it lived in a woman past 40. I stood in the half-lit shell of the building, phone pressed to my ear, listening as the city clerk explained, politely, regretfully, that my permit application had been delayed. Delayed was a gentle word for obstructed. "There's concern," the clerk said, lowering her voice, "from certain commercial stakeholders." Translation: men with money didn't like that I hadn't asked their permission. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the exposed brick wall in front of me. For a moment, doubt crept in. Not because I couldn't do this, but because I was doing it alone. Then heels clicked behind me. "You're not," Marisol said. She stood there with a folder tucked under her arm, eyes sharp, coat immaculate. "I heard about the delay," she continued. "It's procedural nonsense." "Of course it is," I sighed. She smiled faintly. Fortunately, I speak fluent nonsense. We sat on overturned crates going through documents, zoning precedents, historical preservation clauses, community benefit overlays. She had come prepared. They underestimate you, she said calmly. That's their mistake. I watched her as she spoke, measured, intelligent, unapologetic. It struck me then how different strength could look. Jules' strength was physical, steady, built from skill and sweat. Marisol's was strategic, surgical, sharpened by systems that once tried to exclude her. And mine was emerging, still unfamiliar, still terrifying. That night, Jules found me sanding down an old door in the workshop space. "You're working late," she observed. I needed to feel useful, I admitted. She took the sander from my hands, set it aside gently. "You don't have to prove anything." I laughed softly. "I've been proving things my whole life, I just didn't know it." She leaned against the table, closer than usual. "They're pushing back," she said. "Yes. And you're not backing down." "No." A pause. "Good," she said. Her approval warmed me more than I expected. Then hesitantly, "Marisol seems impressive." I met her gaze. "She is." Something unspoken passed between us. Not jealousy, not yet. Awareness. The following week, the meeting was scheduled. City council, developers, lawyers. And me. I wore a simple navy suit, nothing flashy, nothing apologetic. As I spoke, I felt it, the shift. They interrupted less, listened more. Because this time I had numbers, case law, community signatures. And when a developer leaned back and said, "Let us be realistic, a leaner. You're asking us to believe this isn't just a phase." I smiled. "I'm asking you to recognize that your assumptions are outdated," I said evenly, "much like your projections." Murmurs. He flushed. By the end, the delay was lifted. Not because they liked me, but because they couldn't stop me. Outside, Marisol squeezed my hand. "Well done," she said. Across the street, Jules watched us, unreadable. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about a building. It was about visibility, choice, and the dangerous, beautiful truth that my life, finally, was expanding faster than I could control. They tried to divide her, not realizing she was stronger than all of them. Success has a way of making people uncomfortable. The permits cleared, the renovation timeline approved, the whispers shifted from mockery to suspicion. Who's backing her? That kind of money doesn't appear overnight. There has to be a catch. I heard it all, sometimes whispered behind hands at the cafe, sometimes said loudly enough for me to hear. They needed a story where I didn't earn this, where my confidence came from someone else's permission. I let them talk. Inside the building, progress unfolded every day. Walls came down, light poured in. Jules moved through the space like she belonged to it because she did. Watching her work felt grounding, like witnessing something honest take shape. But tension crept in quietly. Marisol stopped by more often now, usually with updates, documents, reassurance. She and Jules were polite, respectful, and distant. One afternoon, I walked into the main hall to find them standing several feet apart, both silent. "What did I miss?" I asked lightly. "Nothing," Jules said too quickly. Marisol's gaze flicked to her. "We were just discussing timelines." I nodded, but the air felt heavy. Later, Jules spoke. "I don't like being talked about like I'm part of the package," she said quietly as we stood near the open windows. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "She assumes I'm here because of you, not because I chose to be." The words stung. "I never said that," I replied. "I know," she said, "but I feel it anyway." That night, Marisol called. "Jules thinks I'm undermining her," she said frankly. "Are you?" I asked. A pause. "No," she said, "but I'm not pretending I don't care about you." My breath caught. Care. The word hovered between us. "I'm not asking you to choose," she added. "I'm asking you not to hide." I lay awake long after, the truth pressing in. I wasn't being torn apart. I was being seen, and it terrified me. The breaking point came at the fundraising gala. A developer cornered Jules, smirking. "So," he said loudly, "are you the muscle or the girlfriend?" Jules' jaw tightened. Before I could intervene, Marisol stepped forward. "Neither," she said coldly. "She's the reason this building stands." The man laughed. "Relax, it was a joke." "It was disrespect," Marisol corrected. Silence spread. Jules looked at her, surprised. And something shifted. Later, the three of us stood outside under the string lights. "I don't want to compete," Jules said. "I want honesty." "So do I," Marisol said. I exhaled, heart racing. "Then here it is," I said. "I care about you both in different ways, and I won't apologize for that." They didn't speak at first. Then Jules nodded. "Okay," she said. "Then let's do this without lying." For the first time, I understood. Strength wasn't choosing one truth. It was holding all of them. The backlash came the moment we stopped hiding. It always does. The blog post appeared first, anonymous, of course. A grainy photo of the three of us outside the building, taken out of context, paired with a headline dripping with smug judgment. "Midlife confusion or abuse of power. Local investor S lifestyle project raises questions." By noon, it was everywhere. "She's unprofessional. This isn't about community, it's about ego." Disgusting. I sat at my kitchen table, hands trembling, scrolling through comments that reduced my life to spectacle. 50 years of integrity dismissed in a paragraph. Jules paced behind me, furious. "They're trying to shame you into disappearing." Marisol was quieter, eyes cold with focus. "They've overreached," she said, "and they've made a legal mistake." I looked up. "What do you mean?" She slid her laptop toward me. "Defamation, implication of misconduct. They crossed a line." For a moment, fear loosened its grip and was replaced by something steadier. "Resolve." "We respond," I said, publicly. The press conference was scheduled for the following morning. They expected tears, excuses, retreat. Instead, I walked up to the podium calm, centered, unapologetic. "I am not confused," I said. "I am not abusing power, and I will not be shamed for living honestly." Gasps, cameras clicked. "I built my career by lifting others. This project reflects that. And my personal life is not a scandal. It's a testament to consent, respect, and truth." Behind me, Jules stood tall, Marisol steady. Questions flew, accusations, attempts to provoke. I didn't flinch, because I knew something they didn't. By that afternoon, Marisol had released the documents. The anonymous blog traced back to a developer who'd lost the bid. The same man who'd mocked me in that first meeting. Sponsors pulled out, investigations opened. By evening, the article was gone. So was his credibility. That night we sat together in the nearly finished hall, dusty, imperfect, real. "They thought humiliation would break you," Jules said softly. "It sharpened her," Marisol replied. I smiled, exhausted and alive. "I spent half my life shrinking," I said. "I'm done now." They reached for my hands at the same time. And for the first time, I didn't pull away. They finally showed her respect after she changed the rules forever. The opening night arrived quietly. No red carpet, no celebrity endorsements, just warm light spilling from tall windows and the low murmur of people who had been waiting for a place like this to exist. The building breathed again. Artists hung their work. Woodworkers ran their hands over shared benches. Teenagers laughed in corners once abandoned to dust and decay. I stood near the entrance, watching it all, my heart full in a way I had never known. A man approached, the same city official who delayed my permits months ago. He shifted uncomfortably. "You proved us wrong," he admitted. "This works." I nodded politely. It always would have if you de-listened sooner. Across the room, Jules taught a young woman how to steady a saw. Marisol spoke with community leaders, confident and composed. They belonged here. So did I. Later, as the crowd thinned, the three of us stood alone in the center of the hall. "I used to think respect came from approval," I said quietly. Turns out it comes from standing still when the world tries to move you. Jules smiled. You didn't just build a space, you built permission. Marisol nodded, for others and for yourself. Outside, the ocean wind carried the sound of possibility. I was 50 years old when my lesbian era began. Not with confusion, with clarity, not with shame, with choice. They underestimated me because it was easy. They learned too late that I was never small, only waiting. They thought the story was over until she became the example. Success doesn't silence critics. It teaches them new language. After opening night, the praise came wrapped in backhanded compliments. She's surprisingly competent. Good for her age. An interesting lifestyle choice. I heard it all, smiled through most of it. Because I'd learned something essential. You don't dismantle prejudice by arguing with it. You outgrow it. The building thrived, classes filled, waiting lists formed. People who'd never been invited into rooms like this now had keys. And that's when the emails started. Women, men, queer kids with trembling words, people in their 40s, 50s, 60s. I thought it was too late for me. I didn't know I was allowed to change. Thank you for being visible. Each message landed like a hand on my back, steadying me. One afternoon, a young reporter arrived, earnest, nervous. They say you're redefining what reinvention looks like, she said. I laughed softly. I'm just refusing to disappear. That quote went viral. And suddenly the same people who dismissed me wanted panels, interviews, advice. I chose carefully. Visibility without boundaries is another kind of erasure. The real test came at the town hall meeting. A proposal surfaced to replicate the model, without me. Strip the soul, keep the optics. A man stood at the podium, confident. We think this concept can be scaled professionally. I waited, then stood. This works because it's rooted in respect, I said, not extraction. Murmurs. You can't copy that without listening to the people you once ignored. Applause broke out, loud, sustained. He sat down. Jules squeezed my hand. Marisol smiled. Later that night, as we locked up together, Jules said, You know they're watching you now. I know, I replied. And I'm not afraid anymore. Because power isn't loud. It's consistent. And respect is earned the moment you stop asking for it.